Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. I thank Chandana and Ganeshwar for inviting me here. And it's always incredible in India. So, indeed, today I'm not going to talk about population genetics or anything actually that I do, but as a head of the Institute of Genomics, we are involved very much in implementing or aiding the implementation of personalized medicine in Estonia, and I'm going to talk about that and the issues and problems that come with it. But before that, actually, I would like to address an issue that at the moment in the world is far more important than the implementation of personalized medicine. That is the war, Russia's war in Ukraine. You may think that it is not directly relevant to any particular conference, scientific conference in the world, but it's not true. On the face value, it is indeed a conflict between two big countries, but it's not that. It is Russia's war against freedom, and science needs freedom as air. So Russia's war against Ukraine today is Russia's war against freedom, and every scientist all over the world need to support Ukraine as much as we can, because Ukraine is fighting for us. Slava Ukraine. So back to the issue at hand. As I said, it comes from the Institute of Genomics in Estonia. It's a relatively new structure compared to history of, let's say, South Asia. But we are combined of two directions, population genetics and medically relevant genomics. And we house the Estonian Biobank, which has more than 200,000 participants, which forms around 20% of the adult population of Estonia. So today what I'm going to do is touch briefly on the sort of two cornerstones of why we are advancing with personalized medicine in Estonia. This the data resource, the biobank I mentioned, and what we like to call e-society, which basically means an infrastructure that enables secure data transfer, data linking of private data in a secure manner. So that is extremely important in implementation, in using the data to produce information. And then I have a couple of examples of the utility, or a couple of examples of what are the actual first medical services that are becoming available statewide manner. And then I'll talk about some challenges, or many challenges. There are many challenges, but I'll talk about only a couple, and also point to some solutions that we are trying to provide to this challenge. Okay, so personalized medicine is a very wide term, has many slices to it. The underlying notion is, of course, that it makes use of personalized, personal level information to provide personal level prevention, diagnosis, treatment. But we can divide personal medicine in many slices. Probably the sort of oldest thing that has been around is precision diagnostics of rare diseases like the Mendelian diseases. There's lots of going on in precision treatment, for example, in cancer, or as we heard yesterday, in treatment of Parkinson's with cells derived from the patient. But what I'm going to talk about is actually these two slices of personal medicine, personal prevention of common diseases using polygenic scores and pharmacogenetics, which takes into account the personal or individual level drug responses. So what you need to implement personal medicine, you need first you need data, genetic data, that's obvious, but even more obvious or more sort of difficult actually already is medical data to sort of have it in a uniformly readable way. I'll come to that also a little bit, and also environmental data. And this actually is not trivial at all. And most of the people think about genetic data, that we need to sequence and genotype, that's all true, but these other two components are quite often overlooked until the moment you actually need to put these things together. Then of course, we guys need to do research to arrive at information that can be implemented then in the medical system. And it is intentional that this last blue shape is larger than the first two ones, because having been involved in these implementation issues for the past several years, I do think that this is even more challenging than data and research. And we'll come to the issues here. The underlying thesis, of course, is that because individuals differ genetically in their predisposition to disease, we need to understand this and take this into account when designing prediction and prevention and treatment. So as I said, but first let's look at the data block here, and see what we have in Estonia. As I said, we have a biobank which has around 20% of adult population, which is over 200,000 individuals. That's a small number in Indian context, but in Estonian context it is pretty large. You mentioned 20% of India being in a biobank. And we have geotype data for all of this biobank, and some whole genomes to aid us with imputing, and some other data, doing also initiatives on microbiome and metabolomics and so on. This is the history of the biobank. I think the only two things I want to highlight is that we started more than 20 years ago, and the most important, the first thing basically what we did was a law. So that actually is a very very crucial step. That everything, the data privacy, who can access the data, so on, is basically written in a law, which makes it very clear and transparent how things are handled, and has been very helpful. I said that the other cornerstone why we can try these initiatives in Estonia is the e-society. We have a system called Xgrow, which enables secure linking of data in different state data repositories. And this based on personal ID code that everybody has. And this is actually pretty cool that we can link with the biobank data from basically, I would almost say all sapiens registers, but in reality, of course, every time we need to also say why we need to have this data, and in some cases the ethical board says that no, you don't need this data. Yeah. So that is super important and super sort of handy. Yeah. Anyway, so putting together the data, when we have the data now, when we talk about personalized prediction prevention, of course the tool, the main tool is polygenic risk scores. So for most common diseases, genome-wide association studies have shown that there are many genes involved, each of which has a very small effect. And to make sense of it, you can construct polygenic scores, basically adding up all the small effects of these different genes to arrive at a composite risk score. And of course, you can go further and then add also environmental, lifestyle factors into this risk score and arrive at some composite risk score. So using so these polygenic scores are the main workhorse of personal prediction and prevention. So another sort of summary of the strategy that we use is something actually what we heard also yesterday from Dr. Fisher's presentation, that to characterize a population, you need to, in addition to what is already known for the let's say, global or race duration, genetic variation, makes sense to sequence a proportion, a small proportion of the population to reveal the population-specific variation, and then update genotyping arrays with this information, and then can screen very cheap cost the bulk of the population and do imputation to use the sequences that you obtained to compute the data and arrive at the pretty high quality data for the population. And the key thing here is that it is relatively cheap. This is a couple of years ago when we did 150,000 samples in 2 years, and on average it costs collection and genotyping in population costs just 70 euros. This is data that will be there for you during the rest of your life, and it costs well maybe if you're in Norway you don't get 7 years. Of course, when you get your genetic risk for a disease, there's nothing you can do with that genetic risk. But for the vast majority of common diseases, you have cumulative risks with environmental lifestyle risks, and these are the risks that can be addressed. And the hope is that, or actually the understanding is that knowing your personal genetic risk makes you more motivated to address the environment and your lifestyle. So there are two general applications in the population health context for polygenetic scores. One is to assist or aid the classical screening programs to stratify population according to the genetic risk for the classical screening programs. The classical example is breast cancer, where many countries have screening programs going on. And for example, in Estonia, we have a screening program where people at the age of 50, women from the age of 50 are called to mammography screening. Now here we have a polygenic score of breast cancer plot. We have age on the x-axis and the cumulative incidence of breast cancer on y-axis, and the dotted line is the population average, and the colored lines are people with different risk. For example, the red line here is the top 5% women with the 5% of women with the highest polygenic score, polygenic risk for breast cancer. And now you can see that as the average risk is at the age of 50 is here, the same risk for the 5% with the highest risk is reached already at the age of before 40. So it's a no-brainer that you call these 5% of women to the same screening program just 5 or 6 years earlier. And this is something that is now going to be in practice starting from 2024 at Estonia. The other application for the polygenic score is this personalized prevention, because that is now personalized early diagnosis that makes it easier to treat breast cancer. Because breast cancer is very well treatable when you do it early. The other application, as I already mentioned, for polygenic score is personalized prevention through altering lifestyle. Here the examples are either type 2 diabetes or cardiovascular disease, where we developed such simple tools. I'm sorry, this is the small printing is in Estonia, but you won't be able to see it anyway. But the trick is sort of easy. We show the cumulative risk, the combined risk of the genetic risk and lifestyle risk here, and then here a person can adjust or make let's say targets for weight, smoking status, and some other characteristics, and then the risk is altered. And you can see how, for example, how your risk will be lowered if you do these adjustments to your lifestyle. So, and studies have generally shown that if we all know that smoking is bad and so on, but studies have shown that if it is shown to you that your personal risk is higher than the average risk, and you personally will gain more than on average through altering your lifestyle, then this would work. So, so much about the use of polygenic scores that will be in actual usage in Estonia, like within the year. The other utility of personal medicine or aspect of personal medicine is, of course, pharmacogenetics. We all know that if you do the same treatment to the same disease, then the response in the population will be different. For some, the drug has no effect and also is not toxic, so nothing happens. For some, the drug has no effect but is toxic, and all possibilities in between. And importantly, vast majority of individuals are already known to carry variants that affect drug response. So here, again, I'm not showing any science that we do. This is how to implement personalized medicine. And there is a very useful consortium called the Clinical Pharmacogenetics Implementation Consortium, which actually reads all pharmacogenetics papers and validates their results, and keeps a list of validated pharmacogenetic targets, so that you can basically just use this consortium work and implement it. So that is approved and makes it very well, I would say at least theoretically very easy. In practice, there will be all sorts of problems. And this is one example of a pharmacogenetics report where a female with depression was actually prescribed with, if I'm not mistaken, 14 different antidepressants, and with many of them she got many of them worked very well initially, but there were very severe side effects. And the reason, of course, was that she carries a gene variant which makes her a slow metabolizer of several active ingredients that are used in many antidepressants. And if you're a slow metabolizer, it means that the drug stays in your system for a longer time, and this translates into past the effect of the drug, but also a much higher chance of serious side effects. So had her doctor gotten this report before prescribing 14 different drugs with a trial and error method, many problems would have been avoided. So this is also now hopefully implemented for at least a couple of dozen active ingredients starting from 2024. So, and these two services, the breast cancer screening and the pharmacogenetics, will be the two first services active in Estonian healthcare. The whole system, how you manage the data and actually the medical service is super complicated, and actually I don't know how I'm going on time, but I think I'm not going to go into the details here. The point here is that we have tried to design the system so that it is maximally secure and controlled, so that the data, the genetic data, will always stay in a state-controlled repository, and the tools that use the data to calculate, for example, monitoring scores, they are sent into a secure environment in a sandbox where they can get access to the data, and only the results will go out from the system, so that the data will not be distributed to many service providers. I think this is key element, and a similar structures are implemented or thought of in Europe. So as I mentioned, there are whole lots of challenges in the implementation process of personal medicine. I'm just gonna highlight some of them in the data section. Data privacy and public trust, for example, in Germany, it is very difficult to do this kind of stuff because public trust in letting your personal data be with an institution is very low. In Estonia, this public trust so far is actually super high. Like 80% of people think that biobank is a cool thing and we should make use of it. And there is huge, it's very difficult to actually figure out how we can use, we can analyze data in a federated data repository environment. So that, let's say, most countries will have their own data repositories, but to analyze this data, you need to combine the data. But you can't combine the data, especially if we think, let's say, 10 years from now, just already think about the sheer volume of the data. Combining it is not possible. So we need to figure out how to analyze data while it is in different places. When you don't have one big table, you have many tables, and so they need to be formatted exactly the same way, and so on. So it's actually a big challenge. And then health data. Everybody has been to a doctor and seen how they write down the disease you have. It's impossible to read it, and so it is it's actually a huge problem to analyze health data. Then research-wise, there's actually for thinking of polygenic scores, for example, there are many problems actually. First of all, let's say the individual level variability of polygenic scores. If you run the same polygenic score for same individuals using the same data, using a Bayesian polygenic score method, you get different results. It's like different results every time, which is understandable. We understand why and so on. But if you need to use these results to implement polygenic score and take the first 5% of people, then this list of first 5% will differ each time slightly. And these kind of issues are trivial from the scientific point of view, but not trivial from the implementation point of view. Then there is a big problem in cross-population polygenic score transferability. That's if we, most of the data is generated, most of the genomic data is generated on West Eurasian populations. Most of GWASs, most of genome-wide association studies have been done on these populations. We have the polygenic score designed using these association studies. If we try to apply this to genetically different populations, we run into problems. And furthermore, if we extend the same problem into metropoles, or let's say metropoles, where we have mixed individuals with very different genetic backgrounds, how to use a polygenic score there when we know that they're not easily transferable between populations with different genetic ancestry. And again, when we look at the blue box, the challenges, the list of challenges is longest. And they are in many ways not interesting challenges. From a scientific point of view, they are nuisance challenges. But from the implementation point of view, they are very important and difficult challenges. Just two examples. I'm not going to read them out. To make an example how well stupid from the scientific point of view they are. For example, this one. You need your medical devices that, for example, calculate the polygenic score to be in vitro medical devices in the EU, which means that you need to get a CE mark, which you can get from things called notified bodies. And there are 7 in EU. The queue to get your medical device approved is over the nose how long. So it's just a stupid problem, but these are the problems that we face. So I'm going to, in the end now, just show a little bit what we do in the institutes, what we do in our institutes to address these scientific challenges concerning polygenic scores. I already mentioned that, and you probably all know that the transfer of polygenic scores between populations is a challenge. This is a relatively busy slide, but let's look at this for a moment. This is hazard ratio is here on the x-axis. It's basically tells you how well a polygenic score predicts the actual risk. And we can see here that, for example, type 1 diabetes or prostate cancer, the polygenic score works in Europeans very well. In some other diseases, like, for example, if you get your appendicitis, is much less genetically controlled and much more controlled by how big seeds you eat. So, and look at these green bars. These are then polygenic scores for how they work in Europeans. But now, if we take the same polygenic score and apply this, for example, to South Asians, to Indians, for example, then we can see that, for example, type 2 diabetes, the score doesn't work at all. For prostate cancer, actually, the same score works even slightly better than for Europeans. But for most scores, it works worse, and especially if we take African populations, then it's much worse. So what can we, and globally, of course, the problem gets worse because vast majority of the data, the genomic data available comes from West Eurasian or European populations. So if we want to implement, set a target to implement more personalized medicine worldwide, then this graph here is a huge problem. So, 2 problems. The transferability of polygenic scores between populations and personal medicine for mixed individuals. So, and we thought about it, and Luca here was the driving force of these studies. What if we can take the genomes into their ancestral components and apply the polygenic scores on only these parts of the genomes? So, in the first case, where we have a situation where we have a population for which we don't have a GWAS, we don't have genomic data for that population, so we cannot do a genome by association study. But this population as a whole is admixed with a population or group of populations for which we have the data and the GWAS analysis have been done. Then we can take these mixed genomes, deconvolute them into their ancestral components, and then apply the polygenic score derived from the population coming from to this part of the genome. And then we arrive at something that we call antigen-specific partial polygenic score. Of course, this partial polygenic score is as good as large is the proportion of the genome to which we calculate it. So if if this population were working with these 50% admixed with something else, then the score is 50% good. But it is still much better than 0. So, how am I doing it? 2 minutes. Okay, so I will skip the science and continue with cartoons. For metropods, for individual level problem where we have a mixed individual, and we have, for example, in the easiest case, we have somebody who is mixed with between 2 source populations, in which both cases we have genomic data and the GWASs have been done. Then we can start with the mixed genome, deconvolute the ancestry, run phylogenetic score on both of the partial genomes, and combine the partial scores to arrive at the combined ancestor-specific phylogenetic score. So this would be a solution for well, metropods and not only metropods. Okay, so and with that, actually, I'm done. This is these are the people in Tartu, and thank you.
So thanks, Professor Matt, for that wonderful lecture. And you did very well on time. It was exactly 35 minutes and 50 seconds up. Thanks for that. So since Professor Matt is a keynote lecture, we are not taking the questions to his presentation. You can talk to him over coffee break. So thank you, Professor Matt, again for that wonderful. Now
I would like to call Professor Mait Metspalu to felicitated with a memento to Professor Mait Metspalu.
Mm-hmm.